So hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health webinar. We really appreciate y'all being here. My name is Russell Spieth. We'll hear from my partner. I want to say partner in crime, but that's not really right. My partner on this program, Jessica Zavala, in a moment. I just want to say, first of all, I am very excited about the topic today. I'm excited about all of our topics, but I have to say, this topic with collegiate recovery communities is a bit near and dear to my heart. And I guess I want to sort of begin this webinar by saying that a part of our mission, the Ohio Program for Campus Safety and Mental Health, is really to, as you all know, promote wellness, decrease incidence of suicide, as well as, enhance academic outcomes on college campuses. And we believe a really large part of that is hearing from our students, the folks who have the lived experience of what is it like right now on a campus of higher education attempting to meet my goals. So we really want to hear from students, as we believe that they really are should be at the forefront of a lot of our decision making around programming and in our efforts. A few other things I wanted to mention. So relevant to this topic, we did just get some data from the 2017 Healthy Minds survey. Many Ohio campuses use the Healthy Minds survey. And again, this was from 2017. It was kind of a nice cross-section of about 13 Ohio campuses, community colleges, state universities, kind of across the continuum. And just to kind of put in our minds, that it was a sample of about 7,600 students. In the past 2 weeks, 20% of them reported binge drinking 5 or more drinks 3 to 5 times in a 2-week period. So again, about 20% of Ohio students in this sample indicated 3 to 5 times in the past 2 weeks they drank 5 or more drinks at one setting, as well as 16% of the students reported some type of illicit drug use in the past 30 days. So this is something that's, by the way, that's pretty consistent with national data and previous Ohio data. So, we have certainly issues with folks drinking in a way that's unhealthy, as well as using illicit drugs and alcohol. So we think this is a really timely topic. And let me just do introductions really quick. So we'll start off with Michael Harhager. He's a graduate student at the University of Akron. He graduated with a bachelor's in psychology in 2006 and is currently pursuing a master's degree in social work. Michael identifies as a person in recovery from alcohol and drug abuse. He is approaching 4 years of sobriety. That's fantastic. He completed a 12-month intensive inpatient rehabilitation program in Akron, Ohio in July 2016. Michael currently works at a community behavioral health agency. He's a case manager working directly with the homeless population. His area of expertise is mental health, housing, and substance abuse. Michael is currently the vice president of the Collegiate Recovery Community Organization at the University of Akron. He also serves on the board of the Summit County Continuum of Care, which aim is addressing the issue of homelessness in the local community. So pretty amazing speaker we have there. We also have Aaron Blake, who's a graduate student in Advanced Standing Masters of Social Work program at the University of Akron, the College of Health Professions, and is graduating in May 2019. Yay! I'm sure you are feeling every bit of that. She also has a Bachelor of Social Work from University of Akron. She is the co-president and a founding member of Ruse in Recovery, the collegiate recovery community at the University of Akron. She works in chemical dependency treatment with incarcerated mandated clients and works part-time as an office manager. She's incredibly active in advocacy and mutual support in the local recovery community. She's also the lucky mom of 3 amazing kids and probably has the kids who are pretty lucky to have an amazing mom. Thank you so much for joining us. Amazing presenter there as well. And we also have Professor John Ellis, who became a full-time member of the School of Social Work beginning in the fall of 2015. His prior university experience had been as an adjunct professor at the School of Social Work at Cleveland State University since 2007. Sorry, he mentioned that he's at School of Social Work at University of Akron. He has about 30 years of experience in the field of addictions and mental health. and many other prior roles, including roles of leadership at the Summit County Alcohol and Drug and Mental Health Services Board. I also just want to say I'm a person in long-term recovery, and my recovery journey began on a college campus in 1995. So these are important topics, and I'm glad that you all are joining us. And now I'll turn it over to the folks that you wanted to, oh, Jessica had a quick announcement. Sorry, Jessica.
Oh, sure. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I just had a brief reminder about our upcoming March webinar. Will actually be on Wednesday, March 20th at 12 p.m. Dr. Dory Hutchinson from Boston University will be presenting on the topic, supporting students with accommodations for severe and persistent mental illness. And so a link will actually go out for you to register for that webinar as well.
Thank you. So again, my name is Erin Blake. I'm a student at the University of Akron, and I'm really excited to be here to share our journey in forming a collegiate recovery community. We are the Ruse in Recovery. That was a name that we voted on at one of our very first meetings when we all got together. So next, we're going to go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I am going to share who we are, what is a CRC, and why we should support their presence on campus. And then Professor Ellis is going to give you a little history of CRCs. Why do we need them on campuses, specifically at the University of Akron, and how did we get started? And then Michael is going to talk about what it meant to become a student organization for a bunch of students to try to get together and form this formal university organization. And then he's going to talk about what we've been up to the last 2 years and what are our future goals. And then, so we, like I said, we are the Ruse in Recovery. We picked that name. We all voted on it. In the beginning, we had a group of about 15 people. We are a diverse group. Our youngest current participant is 18, female, Caucasian, and it ranges all the way up to an African-American male who is in his 60s and pursuing the addictions course. So we have a lot of different students that come together because we share that we've all overcome that significant barrier of addiction. And then the hope is also that we will reach people who are still struggling, who don't know what recovery is. And the idea is that we would become support for people. So here you can see us. This is a picture of just a few of our members. We are on Facebook. So if you have time, like us on Facebook. We are Ruse in Recovery. You can search by Ruse in Recovery Akron. On the left, you can see Nicole. She is joined by her son. She's our treasurer. Next to her, that is me. Thrilled for our 4th photo opportunity that day. And then there are a few other members who are still active in the collegiate recovery community. And Michael is the 3rd from the right. And Professor Ellis is the man behind the camera. So check us out on Facebook. So a little background. First, I'm going to tell you about what is collegiate recovery. You will hear the words collegiate recovery community and collegiate recovery program used interchangeably. There's not a universal definition of each one. Basically, it is either a student organization or university program that supports students who are in recovery or seeking recovery. And it provides a platform to talk openly about how powerful recovery is, and that the opioid epidemic is such a big problem all over the United States, but specifically in Ohio. And we're seeing that also translate to our students in undergrad. So our hope is that as we grow, more people will find us. So it's not necessarily a support group, although we do have a meeting every other week on campus as a support group. We're basically a platform. We do social engagement, we have activities, and we're really trying to get the word out there that we exist and that it is a good thing to support recovery on campuses. So just to be clear, recovery means a lot of different things to different people. For us, there hasn't always been a universal definition of recovery. So the Betty Ford Consensus Panel came up in 2007 with the definition of recovery, and it works well for our own definition of recovery. So it's a voluntarily maintained lifestyle characterized by sobriety, personal health, and citizenship. It is a lot more than just not drinking. For a lot of us in recovery, it means rebuilding relationships and working towards a healthier lifestyle and achieving goals, which fits nicely in with pursuing higher education because it's a built-in life plan. So another thing I want to be clear on, and I'm sure some of you may have heard this, but we want to use person-first language. It's important to use empowering language when we're talking about people in recovery. For a long time, there has been the stereotype or stigma associated with being an addict or a substance abuser, and there's really no good form of abuse. So we're really trying to get away from that negative connotation, and what we're trying to do is advance empowering language. So we would say a person who is experiencing a substance use disorder or active addiction, rather than calling someone an addict. We would talk about substance use or misuse, rather than abuse or abuser. Talk about a person's story. It would be a powerful story of recovery, rather than the tragedy of addiction. And then talk about substance-free or positive and negative, rather than clean or dirty. The idea is that we highlight the fact that recovery is possible. We just don't always hear about it. And the reason that we don't always hear about it is because addiction is sensationalized in the news. It's tragic to hear about the overdose epidemic and all the deaths and the negative consequences of active addiction. And so we don't get to hear about those stories of recovery. And so one of our goals with the CRC is to really give a voice that it's not all tragic. It's not all doom and gloom. We do recover. And when we do, and we get together and support each other, we really do thrive. We do quite well. There are a lot of us. Surprising, it was kind of easy to find a few people who were interested in pursuing recovery in higher education. So one of the reasons we don't hear about recovery, I think it's important to share the personal human aspect of it. And so for me, I am a person in long-term recovery. I have not found it necessary to use drugs or alcohol since February 11th of 2014. That is the longest I've ever been able to stay sober, 5 years, all in a row. So my anniversary was 2 days ago. It's incredibly exciting. We celebrated because it's a big source of pride for people in recovery. February 11th of 2014 is just 6 weeks after I entered my undergraduate degree. And so I was not sober the first month and a half of going to college. And it was a really big transition. I was a single mom and I didn't have a driver's license and, all the symptoms of active addiction. And so when I got to school, I was coming out of a relapse. I had previously had 18 months sober, and part of that active addiction and the negative aspect of relapse, I was really embarrassed to share who I was. And I was also afraid to talk about my recovery because the idea of being an addict or just a drunk or just a junkie, things I'd heard my whole life, I felt like if I shared that with classmates, it would diminish their perception of me. And I also think too, I felt like I had to prove to myself that I deserved to be there because I didn't always feel like I deserved to be in higher education. So in class, I was in the social work program. We were learning all about addiction and treatment and different agencies that I had real life firsthand experience with, a ton of insight and things I wanted to share. And I just kept quiet. I didn't want to share anything about myself because I was afraid of what people might say or if they would talk about me. And I didn't want it to follow me onto my my next steps or my career. So Michael, if you switch to the next slide, it talks a little bit about at the CRC, our hashtag catchphrase, student smashing stigma. The idea is that that stigma that's associated with addiction doesn't have to be attributed to recovery also. A lot of what I would hear when I would tell someone, not just at school, but anyone, that I'm in recovery, they would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," or "No way, you don't look like a person who would ever use drugs." And they didn't mean it that way to come across negative, but really, who does look like a person who would use drugs? I mean, addiction doesn't discriminate. And so what changed for me when I was going to school, I think I was in my second year of undergrad, and working like crazy and struggling and stressed out and little kids and tons of assignments. And there was a visiting lecturer who came in and talked about all the addictions curriculum that the university offered, different tracks we could take. And he, at the end, shared that he was also a person in long-term recovery. And here I was, there's this professor who seems professional and got his stuff together and says that he's in recovery. And that just, I went up to him afterwards and said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know we could say that. Like, you just told an entire classroom of people that you're in recovery, and isn't that going to hurt your career?" And that's all the stuff I was feeling. But in that moment, a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I finally felt like, oh my gosh, it's okay to be myself. I could say that too. And it was the first time in all those years that I felt comfortable sharing that my first 2 years of undergrad, I was also struggling to maintain my sobriety and raise 3 little people. So it was a really powerful event. It didn't take away all of that fear. I still was afraid to share possibly in the future about career because, the act of addiction, it's embarrassing, or creates shame and isolation, and that doesn't go away overnight, but it certainly helped. So when we started talking about developing a CRC, the idea that there was a space for people like me and that maybe we would be able to help others who are in recovery, it was incredibly exciting and motivating. And the first meeting, I remember feeling like, man, this is where I belong. I can't let this happen on campus and not be a part of it, because it's what was missing from my college experience. Even though I was a little older going back to school, I didn't really feel like I fit anywhere. So the CRC has really provided that. So the idea is that by creating this CRC, that we would be able to give voice to recovery rather than the tragedy of addiction, also creating awareness for other platforms, because we know that there's a high risk of suicide on college campuses, and mental health issues are a problem, and many of us don't feel like we can talk about that. So by me going into classrooms and sharing, now that I'm comfortable, that I'm in recovery, that I have struggled, I'm hoping that that might do the same thing for others. And it actually has. So we have had younger students come up to us and say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I could talk about that," or "I'm really struggling, I drank last week," or I didn't know you existed." And that's really exciting, to be able to give someone a place to be themselves and get healthy. So there's a lot of research behind drinking on college campuses and drug use. And for a long time, I think people swept it under a rug. That's my opinion, because it didn't look good for the university. But we all know that in high school, you look forward to college because it's a time to let loose and party, and it's socially acceptable. We're expected to go to college and, the time of our lives. So the word abstinence hostile has been attributed to college campuses because social situations on campus create high risk situations for people who are in recovery. So to go out and do a study group with someone, and then they go out for drinks afterwards, for me in early recovery, the first year, that could have created a really life or death risk, a risk of relapse. Who knows what could have happened? And I don't think we always think about that for young kids in recovery. So the idea is to create a continuum of care. If a person's in recovery, they should be able to have recovery support in high school, and that should transition into college, and then after college also. So really quickly, I want to talk about who benefits from a CRC. So obviously, I benefit, people in recovery benefit, Michael benefits, but it's way bigger than that. It's not just all about us. The people who benefit the most really are the students who are struggling or who don't know that they can talk about mental health issues or addiction. So the idea of the CRC is to create a platform, and Michael will tell you a little bit about this later, but we go into classrooms and we share who we are and what we're trying to do on campus and raise awareness, not just for the students, but also for the educators, to be able to give our professors and staff a place to refer students when they're struggling. That's anonymous. We don't have anything to do with consequences. It's just a safe space. If a educator sees something, they can say something and say, hey, by the way, did you know that there's a meeting on campus? There's a place for you to go. There are other people who are doing the sober thing on campus. It's not all about drinking, because that's one of the things that we hear a lot is that, kids 18 to 24 think everybody parties. And so what am I going to do? If everybody's partying, how in the world am I going to stay sober? So we try to do fun stuff and include families and children. You saw the photo of Nicole, and she brings her kids to our meetings because she doesn't have a lot of other choices, and it's a place for us to support each other. So also children are future for the 1 in 6 kids who will develop a substance use disorder, according to SAMHSA. Those kids are going to be in our high schools, and hopefully they find their way to a recovery high school, because we're starting to do that here in Ohio. But even if they don't, if they end up in undergraduate, if they have a substance use disorder, they will have a place to go and people to support them. So all in all, the entire community, it's a platform for healing, health, and wellness. It supports not just a sober lifestyle, but a healing journey and a place where you can share who you are and be accepted for it. And it creates the voice of recovery. So we're working on defining the science of recovery for people. And that really, it starts on college campuses when we get together and support each other. So I told you a little bit about who we are and why it's important to support recovery in higher education. Professor Ellis is going to give you a quick history on CRCs, discuss the unmet need on campus, and what it was like getting started from his perspective.
Hi, everybody. And thanks, Erin. Thanks for everything you do. And what I can tell you guys is this program would not have started without the voluntary efforts of our students. And just so you know, Akron has 3 campuses. We have one in Wayne County, we have one in Cuyahoga County, we have one in main campus in Summit County. And Erin has basically been driving up from our Wayne campus to participate in this. So, hats off to her and Michael both. I guess, what I really want to say is CRCs aren't new. These have been around for a while. They're formalized, but they're in different levels of complexity. Some of the ones that we've surveyed, they have one in name, but it's really driven by staff and they have difficulty getting any students to be involved. We have other ones that are very student strong, but they're not a formal organization on the campus. So there's a lot of different types of these, but they're not new. Now, the first formal one started in Texas Tech back in about 1970 or 1977. And it has been subject of research by Alexandra Laudet. It has been a model that other schools have gone by. But I just want to say these aren't new. Now there's actually an organization. So when you guys get back to your offices or even, as soon as this is over, you'll want to go to a website called Association of Recovery in Higher Education. And this is a national website that has a list of the schools that are involved. It has startup, technical assistance. They have small grants that are available. They even have a national conference. I believe last year was in Austin. And it's primarily so the leadership of your student orgs can go down to these national conferences and have the social, experience of being in a large scale conference with nothing but recovering people. And on the other hand, to get experiences of how they can build their particular CRC on their campus. And there's a number of ways to do this. So basically, we don't have to reinvent wheels. If you want to start one of these at your school, let's try to find out what some of them look like already, and all these materials are available. There's even a Recovery Campuses magazine that you could just subscribe to that and have a copy of that in the lobby of your counseling center. Because it gives credibility that there's more to these than just a couple students getting together. Now, what I can tell you is the key for starting a CRC is going to be getting buy-in from a university. And what I found here, and a little bit about my background, is I'm a person in long-term recovery. I haven't had a mood-altering substance since December of 1984, which was, it even predates my mullet, and that was a long time ago. So I've gone through about 20 different hairstyles and clothing styles in the last 34 years. I've been in recovery for a long time. And what I learned back then is new people in recovery have the tendency to want to get back in life. They feel behind. So people in recovery, they want to get careers. They go back to school. They do all these kind of things, but unfortunately they go a little underground. And one of the experiences I had in my my undergraduate experience when I was an undergrad at another university in Ohio is there was a group of us that found each other, that we were in recovery. There's these little code words that I would hear one of my classmates say something, and I would ask, are you a friend of Bill Wilson's, or are you in recovery, or those kind of things. And just without any organization, students in recovery found each other. And from my experience at that university, there was a group of about 15 of us that just found each other by being in recovery. And of that group, Jeff is now retired. He was a CFO of Ever Ready Battery. Joe is first trumpet for the Cleveland Orchestra and also is the first trumpet in the Cleveland Playhouse. Jeff is a surgical nurse. Another Jeff is a surgical nurse at Cleveland Clinic. Nicole is an administrator with Children's Services in Cuyahoga County. Myself, I'm actually, they trust me to mold minds as a college professor at a Northeast Ohio school. Everybody of those students that got together, we all stayed sober and we all launched into careers. And I can tell you right here, I would not be sober if it wasn't for that group of people that I found during that university experience. Now, when I came here as a professional, kind of wanted to start one of these. And I heard about them, I found out about them, but some of the barriers are with the university. And I asked, can I send out an email to all students so we could get a meeting for students in recovery? And no, our policy is you can't use an all-student email unless you're a student organization. Okay, can I write an article for our electronic digest that goes to all students, marketing that we're trying to start a student organization for students in recovery? No, you have to be a student organization before you can write an article in the digest. I even remember going to a meeting of administrators and talking about a student, a CRC on another campus, and said they even have, a sober dorm for students in recovery that they can dorm together. And what I was told by administration is all of our dorms are sober dorms. So there was a hesitance administration-wise to buy into this. So what we ended up doing, I know there's students in recovery, and I happen to be the addictions curriculum coordinator for the university as well as a professor. And I would talk to people about licensure. And I would be asked to go into classes. And when I went into classes, I mentioned that I am a convicted felon, that I had a felony in 1983, that I used to be homeless, that I am in recovery. I went back to school, you know, a lot of good things happened. And I've done this in numerous classes at the University of Akron. And there is not one single time that I've done that lecture to a class and I didn't have at least one student come up to me afterwards and say, I'm in recovery too. Just like what Aaron described and some other students did. And to start a student org here, we have to have 10 students that buy in, that go to the first meeting, that sign up for officers and do a copious amount of paperwork to get this together. And when we got that first 10 students, they came from all 3 campuses, were willing to do that paperwork, met on their own time, brought their own donuts or bagels, just in the enthusiasm to start this, knowing that they're not going to be the beneficiaries of it, they're just going to be the people that start it. In about a year, we were able to start that. Now, how we got buy-in from the university, and to take this back, is to come up with a business case for it. And in Ohio universities, one of the big things administrations are focusing on now is how to stop student dropouts, how to retain clients, or retain students. It's not just about recruiting the new student freshman class. It's about maintaining the freshmen that we already have all the way through to their graduation. Now, in looking at some national studies, according to SAMHSA, which is the cabinet level department that funds mental health and drug services in the United States, about 12%, so we're talking about 1 out of 9 of our students between 18 and 25 meet the DSM-5 criterion for a substance use disorder. And that is the highest of any age category. We know that there was a study done, and I've cited these below, that 40% of student attrition at universities is sourced in some type of substance abuse issue. And there was another study by Alexandra Leday that mentions and finds that 34% of these recovery students say they wouldn't even be in college if it wasn't for their CRC. So we know there's a lot of students with a problem. We know it's a leading cause of students dropping out of school, and we also know CRCs help retain these students. Now, right now, you know, this is a little bit about what I just went into, but what we had to do to get this started, it can't be 1 or 2 students. And a difficulty we had some fits and starts for a year because we lose students to graduation every year. You know, Erin is our vice president, and we're losing her to graduation in about 12 weeks, unless I could justify failing her on purpose to keep her here an extra semester to help us out. But now that I said this, and you guys are probably taping it, I got to re-strategize my retention plan. So we lose people. We have a natural turnover of students. In a graduate program, we have a turnover of students every 2 years. In undergrad programs, we have a turnover of students every 4 to 5 years. So we have to find a way to constantly keep that critical mass of active students, or else these programs will die on the vine. So we had our first meeting about a year ago, December. Now, since that time, and this is based on the voluntary enthusiasm of the students in these organizations. Within the first year of our meeting, we were able to take a student, in this case it happened to be Aaron and somebody also from the CRC at Ohio State University, and we met with the leadership of the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, which was the medical director, Mark Hurst, the executive director, Tracy Plouk, the chief of addiction services, Joyce Starr, the director of peer-led services, and we stated a case for CRCs. And one of our hopes is down the road to maybe get some funding from the state because universities don't have a lot of discretionary funds to aim at these. But if we could get some help from on high, because who's fooling who? A lot of these students that we're retaining in our colleges are the future workforce of Ohio. So we want to do everything we can to keep them involved. As we didn't have hundreds of students, we found out that Kent State University is starting a collegiate recovery community. Now, Kent State University and University Akron, we refer to Kent State, not to offend anybody, as things like the evil enemy or the arch rival or the evil empire of that school in Portage County. You know, we have a sports rivalry with them every year. And through some of the efforts of their folks and through a lot of the efforts of Michael and Aaron here, we were able to start our first annual, so our inaugural sober tailgate party for the University of Akron Kent State football game that is an opportunity for the students in recovery of both of those campuses to tailgate together before a game and shout their school pride and have a true college experience. You know, since we started a year ago, we've had over 45 interested students. Now, again, we might have 45 on paper, but that doesn't mean 45 have the time to be active. So, you know, anybody that's ever been to graduate school knows that you give up all social life pretty much while you're in graduate school. We have students that work full time, and we have returning adults coming to school. So time is a problem. So we have to come up with activities that are maybe school-based, but also activities that are on people's private time. We have established a speakers bureau, and what we found is there's a lot of courses in psychology and in nursing and in counseling and in other disciplines, but primarily in the helping profession, that they have a lecture on addictions or they have some course that covers addictions. And now we have a built-in speakers bureau of people that are in recovery from those addictions that can talk about their experience in the community. You know, in Summit County, where the university is involved in a community-based survey where we've been asked to evaluate the effectiveness of drug and alcohol treatment programs throughout Summit County. And one of the things we did is create focus groups of people that are successful in recovery, because who better to have insight into the treatment programs than people that successfully completed them and launched into recovery afterwards. So we've been able to do those kind of things. We have participation from students in our numbers that are on positions inside our county opiate task force. We have people that are involved in addictions in the hospitals. We have that recently Summit County has started a young persons in recovery committee for their opiate task force, and they couldn't find any young people. And we said, hey, you know, we got a collegiate recovery community. Can we partner with you on that? So all of a sudden the community has found value in this too. And then one of the other things that we did, like I said, is, and you've already seen a picture of it, is there's a social media presence. Now, I'm an elderly man, so my social media is pretty much stops at, you know, Facebook. All these young whippersnappers today are doing their Instagram and their Twitter and that kind of stuff that as 59 years old, I just don't have the capacity to understand. But we start these social media presences, so even for those students that can't get to the meetings, even for those students that don't know what's going on and they want to be connected, they could see announcements on that Facebook page of when some of these events and some of these activities are. So I guess to just go back a little bit, I believe, and through experience and you know, and been in this field for a long time, that there is a lot of students in recovery on all of your campuses. The trick is how to get them to find each other. And if you let them find each other, they'll come up with the activities. And it's best that these activities are student directed and student developed, because they know what they like to do. And that might be different. We want to make sure that our university at least doesn't turn them into a volunteer wing and take advantage of them either. So we want them to have fun stuff to do, have a college experience, and maybe be able to help some other people along the way. From what you've seen so far with one of our students, it seemed to have helped there. And you know something? She's helped the university in return, as have Michael and as have every one of these guys. We just found out that the state announced its Social Work Student of the Year for the state of Ohio. And it happens to be one of our Collegiate Recovery community students. And Michael, it isn't you or Aaron. It's the one that brought her kids to the picture that you showed. So there's some statewide recognition. These are great students, and I'm really going to miss them when they leave. And anything that we could do to help another university kickstart some of this like this, we'd be tickled to death to be able to help. So I am going to turn this over to Michael, and he could share a little bit about some of the stuff that they've been doing.
So thank you, John, and thank you everybody for joining us here. And this is really exciting to us, and just to kind of see this take form over the last couple months and the last year, kind of working behind the scenes to get this going. And I just want to spend some time here to kind of tell you what we had to do specifically with the university to get this going. And so one of the first things, and I think it's probably one of the most challenging things that we had to accomplish, was being able to find those students that are out there on campus that are in recovery or that are interested in finding recovery. And we were able to be able to accomplish this through the efforts by John in the classrooms, to be able to get a good foundation of finding the students that were out there, and then being able to take a Saturday and sit down and get an understanding of what is the university's policy and procedures that we have to go through to be recognized as a student organization. So our first go around, we were able to have 15 or so students that we were able to have on the roster. It's pretty common with all universities that you at least have to have 10 students that are in good standing with the university. So they have to have a GPA of over 2.0. So once we were able to get that foundation of our roster, the next thing that we had to do, and we weren't reinventing the wheel here, but we had to create a constitution. And this was something that was already outlined for us. And we just had to go in and tailor it towards our specific organization, and what our purpose was, what the name of the organization was, what are the requirements for new members that are going to be coming into the CRC, how we elect officers. And a lot of this stuff that we were working on is stuff that it will soon be taking form for the next officers that come in. So, we were trying to think of the best way to be able to implement this stuff for those that are going to be coming in behind us. And so once we had all of this stuff done, we ended up submitting all of our applications to the source, which is the university's student organization. And a lot of the groundwork that John had already laid and had conversations with the university, they were prepared for our application to come through, and we were able to kind of streamline the whole process of getting approved. And in February of 2018, we were finally recognized as an official student organization on campus, Ruse in Recovery. And so what that enabled us to do is that now opened up the doors to our access to students and the campus. We were provided, we have an annual budget of $2,500 that we're able to spend. We had access now to be able to market to the students through email. We're able to market to students on campus as well. We're able to have access to all the different buildings on campus to hold our meetings, to have activities and social events. But also too, in our first couple of months, we went through a lot of learning curves and had to really understand the policies that are associated with student organizations, and kind of learning how to navigate and be able to successfully use a lot of the resources that we had disposal of there. And so one of the first things that we ended up creating was our Facebook page. And one of the most challenging things in talking with Kent State's CRC and being able to kind of get an understanding from them as well is understanding how to really communicate with the students. And we're finding out that they are on numerous platforms of social media, and what works for us, and that was starting off with Facebook and email, is not something that a lot of the younger students are, that's not how they're communicating. So we're finding out that, Instagram is very popular, that a lot of these students, they like to have text messages sent to them as opposed to email. But Facebook serves a great purpose for us. We have a public group, which everybody is able to search and see that and see the activities that are going on. And then we have a private group, which you have to answer a series of questions and then get accepted into the group. This way, we're protecting the confidentiality and the privacy of those that may not be comfortable yet with sharing to the rest of the university that they're in recovery. And to date, we have 28 members on our Facebook page, and it ranges from new students that are coming in, that are joining just to find out a little bit more about us, to alumni that have already graduated. And then the other platform that we're using and is consistent as well with universities is OrgSync. And OrgSync is the university's software program that they use. And so a new student enrolls in school and he goes to orientation, and they're able to search through OrgSync all of the different student organizations that are out there. So they could type in, I'm interested in a recovery group on campus, and then it would pull up the Collegiate recovery community, and they'll be able to see all the activities that we got going on. As you can see there, we have an activity coming up. We're going to be having a bowling night in the student union for family and friends. They can see when our meeting nights are. They can require or request more information about the organization and what we do. And then it's also the platform for how we are able to create our budget. It's how we submit all of our documents. It's how we're able to market the students as well too, so we can have flyers, text messages, emails that we can blast out to all the students on campus, and they're able to see the groups that the activities that we have going on as well. So the next thing that, once we became recognized as a student organization, we started really marketing community events. And one of the first ones that we went to was Dreamland, and he was speaking down in Canton. For those of you that have read the book, he talked about the opioid epidemic, and specifically with the University of Akron, and some athletes that had went through some trouble and getting addicted to the opioids. And so these were some great ways for us to be able to kind of connect with recovery in the community and try and attract those people to our on-campus group. We had our first ever sober tailgate that we had with Kent State. And like John had mentioned earlier, historically, Kent and Akron is this rivalry. And through recovery, we were able to kind of create this this friendship and kind of this bond with Kent State, in that, hey, we're both in recovery, and here we are at a tailgate, having a sober tailgate, and which until we got this started, a lot of us didn't even know that sober tailgates were a thing until we got this started. at Kent. So that was really great. And we spent a lot of time prior to these events working with Kent and kind of understanding things that were working for them, things that weren't working. We hosted a Founders Day event, which is a huge event that's held at the University of Akron for Alcoholics Anonymous. We had a camper set up there, and we had a cookout trying to attract students that were in and out of the meeting rooms. And another thing that was, I think it was really interesting for Aaron and I, we ended up being involved in what they call Roof Fest. And you have all the students that are coming on campus, and as they're going through their orientation, we had a table set up, and we were marketing our recovery group. And how we were able to attract a lot of these students is we were providing Starbucks gift cards. So we were able to get them to our table. And as we were talking about recovery and addiction to these incoming freshmen, we realized that a lot of these students had no idea what we were even talking about. And that they didn't even know what addiction was yet, and let alone that there was people on campus that weren't partying, and they were still having an authentic experience on college. So that really kind of, when we stepped back from that, we realized that how we're reaching these students and how much we got to really lay the groundwork for getting these students aware about what's going on campus. And then something that we were able to start last semester was our first ever student-run recovery group on campus. And what we wanted to be able to do was create a space and a safe environment for students that they knew every Friday night they were able to come to a meeting and be able to meet other students that are in recovery. And then this also tied in with some other initiatives on campus with the student, the Office of Students, Dean Strong and his group, as they were starting to see that students were coming through, maybe they were getting in trouble for some type of issue that they had on campus. This was creating an environment where they could recommend them to go to a recovery group. And it was great to see last semester just how these students from all walks of life, from all different professions on the university, we were just coming together here in this meeting. And a lot of the students that we've seen that are finding out about the recovery group, it's from flyers that are just posted in some of the meeting rooms where classes are held. So that's something that we're continuing to carry on this semester. And I think something that's to be known about the recovery groups is that there's so much buzz going on with these groups, but at the same time too, they're not a huge group. So, we have, 28 members on our Facebook page. The meeting groups that attend, we have on a good night, maybe 5 to 7 students that show up. And that's on a really good night at the recovery meetings. So they're a really small knit group of people. And, we're still trying to, we've tapped such a small percentage of those students on campus. We've only really worked in the social work field and the College of Health profession. There's so many other campus programs out there that we are just now kind of starting to market on. And kind of in closing here, and kind of what John was talking about earlier too, one of the challenges that we have faced is that marketing the recovery group on campus is really putting out there that there are students out there that may have alcohol abuse and drug abuse on campus. And that's something that from an administrative level, it's something that I don't know if they really want to admit that that's going on with campus. So the fact that we have a recovery group on campus is starting to, how can we start creating that conversation with them and getting buy-in from them. So last semester, we were able to meet with the director of marketing from the university, and she's really helping us start to, she's a person that is responsible for the messaging that's going on across the campus and what information is being put out there. And she's been instrumental in being able to help us start to get the word out on campus about what our recovery group is. She sent out an email the end of last semester about a recovery group meeting that was going on. We were recently aired on Z88, which is the radio broadcast station on campus, which is a huge broadcast station. So we were able to get on there and talk about our recovery program as well too. So, as we're still really in our early stages of this recovery group on campus, but it's really all about just trying to build that foundation and really get this thing to the point when, Aaron and I aren't going to be around the university in a capacity that eventually, we want to see this thing self-sustaining and getting to the point where as we leave, we're going to have new students that are going to come in behind us and be able to carry that on. So that's all I have on my part.